Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, I have a spicy deck list for you taken directly from a world champion. Now, it is technically a little bit different. I'm playing a few different cards than he was playing. But yes, this is basically Joshua Schmidt's Paleozoic 60 card trap shenanigan list. It's very fun, it's very interesting, and it's very unique in the way that it plays, and I've been really enjoying it. I've only been playing it in the lower leagues, or lower ranks, so I haven't necessarily played it against like the top players. If you want to watch that, go watch Joshua Schmidt. This is not for this. This is just for entertainment, because I played a whole bunch of games today that were really, really fun and really enjoyable, and I wanted to share them with you. So here is the quick rundown of the list. Starting off with the 60 card list, obviously we are playing, 58. We're playing grass. You could fill in to 60 cards. It doesn't really matter too much. And honestly, I liked having lower cards. So there's that. But all in all, the idea is pretty much get Paleos into the graveyard, use things like rollback and what have you, rise to full height, etc., to allow you to survive, as well as potentially interrupt the opponent with things like Daruma Cannon, Dynamicious, etc. And so yeah, that's more or less the idea. So real quick rundown of the cards. We're only playing 5 monsters, 3 absolute backjack. This card is really, really good, especially for trap decks, being able to set up the next draws, which is very nice. Being able to also grab yourself a trap off of the top of the deck. And since we are playing so many traps, it is pretty easy to get a trap. Even if you don't get the search ability, you do have the ability to most likely hit a trap. So very nice to just kind of get you that extra card. And it means you're not immediately dead to something like a Harpy's Feather Duster, which is pretty nice. We have 1 Hyperia because we are playing Elf and Zeus, or not Zeus, Gigantic. Gigantic is basically in here for Zeus, but you can do Elf stuff into Gigantic to get into Zeus there. And then Hyperia is just like a way to draw cards, which is pretty cool. So there's that. We're also playing Snow, obviously. You can play more Snow. I don't think it's really too necessary. Snow's useful, but it's not like insane. And normally you can hit it if you hit it the one time, or if you hit the one, you probably only need the one. As for the spells, we're not playing all too many. We're playing Triple Reasoning, the 1 Grass. We're playing 2 Trap Tantalizing Tune, which just discards a trap or level 4 or insect or plant monster, and then it draws 2 cards. So yeah, we just discard things like Rollback or a Paleo or what have you in order to draw 2. Very nice. We're also playing Time Tearing Morganite, and then the 1 Pot of Desires. And then for the traps, we're playing a lot of janky cards in here. Starting off with the Paleos, we're playing 3 Olenoids, it's a spell trap removal. We have 3 Canadia, which just flips a card face down. We have 3 Dynamicious, which discards a card in order to banish a card on the field that's face up. We have 3 Morella to dump additional traps. We have 3 Leoncolia to put a card back into the graveyard from the banish zone. Notably, this also includes the Pot of Desires banished cards. So you can banish cards off the Pot of Desires and then put them back off of Leoncolia, which is pretty nice. So if your Snow gets banished, you can just put it back, it's fine. Which is a very cool effect. And that is it. That's basically all of the worthwhile Paleos. There are technically a few others. Picaria allows you to discard a Paleo to draw 2, which is kind of whatever. Hallucinogenia allows you to modulate to have the attack and defense of an attacking monster. Or just a monster face up. And then Eldonia allows you to increase attack and defense of one of your monsters. Again, all of these are pretty much useless. They're okay, but not too important. So there's that. But yeah, we're just playing the good ones. Then we are playing 3 Waboku to survive. This is actually really, really useful. It is a normal trap that allows you to chain Paleos while also protecting said Paleos from like battle and stuff like that. So you chain it in the battle phase, you bring back a Paleo, your opponent basically can't do anything. And on top of that, it keeps you alive, which is fantastic. I am also playing Torrential Tribute. It's not great. I haven't really used it in any of the duels. This could probably be like almost anything else. I think like Ice Dragon's Prison would probably be better here. But I did want more removal, and so I was playing Torrential. We're playing Accumulated Fortune, which is very cool. On Chainlink 4, or as Chainlink 4, you can activate this, and then you're able to draw 2 as long as there aren't multiple cards with the same name in the chain. We also are playing Needlebug Nest to mill more cards. We're playing the Fiend Griefing, which also allows you to send backjack, but you just shuffle a card back. This is also pretty useful, being able to like shuffle back a Snake Eye if your opponent only has 2 of the Snake Eyes in their grave when they send like the Flomberg, or, you know, shuffle back a Promethean Princess, shuffle back a whatever it may be, a Snow, your opponent might have, a tier limit monster, etc. Then we have Balance of Judgment. This card, I understand why it's played. You kind of need the additional card advantage sometimes. But for the most part, I haven't really found this to be too useful. I think these are the two most, like, cuttable cards, or, like, interchangeable, with maybe some better traps. Basically, what it does is you draw cards if your opponent has more cards than you on the field. So if you don't have as many cards in your hand or on your field as your opponent controls, then you draw cards until you have an equal amount. And in theory, it's like, oh, if my opponent is playing like Snake Eyes, they have a whole bunch of cards on their field, and then I can set the Balance of Judgment and draw like an additional 2 or 3 cards or something like that, which is pretty nice. But in practice, it ends up just being a dead card most of the time because it's not really doing anything, and it's just kind of delaying the inevitable. It's only really useful if you draw something that just like entirely stops the turn and prevents you from really dying, and that happens very rarely. So I feel like for the most part, I'd rather have something else in this slot. I never really used it. Then we have Rise to Full Height, which just protects your monsters. You banish it from the graveyard, and then you target a monster you control, and then your opponent can only attack that monster for the rest of this turn, which means even if they were to attack and destroy the monster, they can't attack another monster. So it protects the rest of your Paleos. If if you have something in attack position that you don't want to be attacked, you can banish it and protect that. Very useful. We're obviously playing 3 Trap Trick, and then of course the most important cards, 3 Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon, which is very, very useful, just getting rid of cards on the field, and then 3 Rollback as well. So yeah, very good. Now, one thing you may notice already is this deck is very expensive. Now, you can play a much cheaper version of the deck. You can cut the Time Tearing, you can cut the Trap Tantalizing Tune, you can cut the Rollbacks. Daruma is pretty much necessary, but at least get 2 of it. But like everything else, you basically can just play without. And you can play a very cheap version of the deck. You can play like Mirror Forces and stuff like that. But it makes your deck a lot more inconsistent not playing these cards. So, there you go. As for the extra deck, a lot of it does matter. Most notably, we're playing 2 Anomalocaris, which pops cards as well as gives you additional like searches and stuff like that for your deck. Not searches, but like additional advantage for your Paleos. We're also playing Opabinia. Opabinia is the one that searches, so you detach a material if you have a trap card in order to search a trap, a Paleo trap. Very useful. You can also activate your Paleos from the hand, which gives them protection from like your opponent's Harpy's Feather Dusters or what have you. So very useful, playing 3 of those. We're also playing a couple other 2s with the Mannequin Cat and the Gigantic, and then of course Downard and Zeus. We also have the 1 Link Karibo as well as Artemis. Artemis is here for Snow, so you can just get Snow into the graveyard. So, summon Snow, and then link it off for Artemis, and then Snow's in the grave, and then you can bring it back to potentially book another monster. We also have Link Karibo, obviously, because we're playing the ones. We have an Elf in here as well to bring back Hyperia, as I talked about earlier. So there's that, and you can make it pretty easily with the 2s. We also have a Nightmare Unicorn, a Selene, because again, a spellcaster, so you can go into Selene here. You can also then use this to bring back the Snow if you want to, and then Axis Kotaku. And that's it for the deck. Let's hop into the replays and show you how this deck performed. Alright, so the main reason that I wanted to show you this deck list in particular is because of what ended up happening today on stream. So basically, I was playing Paleo because it's a fun deck and I enjoy it, and I was like, cool, I'll just play some games. And then I ended up playing against not 1, not 2, but 3 Dark Magician all in a row, which I found to be unbelievably funny, and all of the games were very, very interesting. First of all, my opponent here decides to add the 1,000 Knives here, and I don't know why. Don't have a monster on the field, but sure, yeah, you pop off king. They're going to set the Eternal Soul, and I'm like, oh, cool. Well, I already have my Opabinia, so there's that. My opponent goes to the battle phase. I'm just going to activate my Morella here just to get it into the graveyard, just in case I wanted to do anything else. I send a rollback as well, and I have a rollback set, which is not exactly great, but it's there. We draw another Accumulated Fortune, which doesn't really do anything, but alas, there you go. My opponent's going to go for the Eternal Soul, and I'm like, I could pop this, but it's not really going to do anything, so I'll just allow it. And we special summon out our Morella. They don't actually activate the effect of the Eternal Soul, which is another reason why I was like, oh, I guess I'll just not pop it. But they actually do activate the effect here, and I'm like, okay, now I'll destroy it. I don't really want the Dark Magician to even hit the field, even though I could have, like, had them special summon it and then pop the Eternal Soul and nuke the field. But I was just like, it hitting the field is already kind of an issue because of the Dark Magical Circle. Anyway, so we're going to go to the battle phase here, and they have the second one, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. Anyway, we're going to summon the Olenoids. However, I have rollback already engraved, so I'm actually going to pay half of my life points in order to target the Opabinia, or the Olenoids in grave, to just pop the Eternal Soul again. And guess what? That's Chainlink 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we get Accumulated Fortune. I'm also going to go for the Leoncolia on Chainlink 5 to put back the banished rollback. So now we have rollback 2 Electric Boogaloo. So we're going to draw 2. We could draw a Trap Tantalizing and the third rollback, which is very funny. And out comes the Olenoids. My opponent attempted to special summon. It didn't work. So we're going to deal 2,400 damage. Now, all of these games are very slow, which is why it's like, last season, I only got to, like, silver. I'm playing these games in bronze, I'm not gonna lie. But I got to silver last season because while I did play quite a lot, at least with this deck, these games are so slow. Like, I think one of the games legit took, like, 30 minutes. So there's that. Anyway, Timaeus activates, which is very funny. And I'm like, sure. And then they fusion summon, and I'm like, oh no! I forgot, this thing's a problem. So my opponent is going to banish with the Dark Magical Circle, to which I will go for the Olenoids, and I remember, I know, like, Dark Magical Circle can't be targeted. I still am chaining something here. This is more so just to chain something, because if the Opabinia leaves the field, I can't really do anything. Like, my Dynamicious and my Olenoids can't work. So I'm like, okay, I'll chain the Olenoids here. I'll pop my own transaction rollback, and then I'll also chain my Paleo, get Dynamicious, activate its effect. Leoncolia will activate as well, and then I will chain, I believe... Oh, no, I don't actually chain the... Oh, right. So I can't chain the Accumulated Fortune because I have 2 Olenoids activating. So I have the effect of the Olenoids in the grave, which is Chainlink 3, and then I have the second Olenoids, which is activating as Chainlink 2 in response to this. So I did that a bit wrong, but not really that big of a deal, because ultimately we're accomplishing more or less what we need. So they do banish our Opabinia, but that's not that big of a deal. They set another card, and I'm like, I'm a little worried about that one, and they ended up setting their Dark Magic attack. They did search this at some point, and I was like, why'd we set this? Huh? Why would we set this? We're in bronze, that's why. Anyway, I search out another Dynamicious, activate the transaction rollback, and go for the Olenoids on the other set card, which was their 1,000 Knives. We're going to go for the Leoncolia, putting back the transaction, and then also chaining to grab up the Olenoids here. So, pretty good. Pretty good. We'll go for the Trap Tantalizing Tune to put back the other transaction rollback into the bottom of the deck. And I'm on 800 life points, mind you. So, I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants. Hopefully, I don't immediately explode. And my opponent draws pretty well here. They go for the Soul Servant, and they put the one Dark Magician that they had in their grave onto the top of the deck. Genius. Genius. Now I want you to guess what that set card is. What do you think that set card is? Please, I need to know. I go for the Dynamicious here, again, mostly just to get bodies onto the field, so we get the Olenoids into rotation. This gives me the Accumulated Fortune, so I can draw 2 cards. It also gives me the Leoncolia to bring itself back. And then we get to go for the transaction rollbacks as Chainlink 6 because it's funny. So we're going to pay another half of our life points. We're down to 400 and bring back, and activate the Olenoids, targeting and destroying the set bond between teacher and student. I guarantee you didn't think it was that one because honestly, in what world would they have made the plays that they made if that was the card that they had? I just don't understand, but okay. Anyway, we're going to go for the Morella here that we ended up drawing off of Accumulated Fortune, which is going to trigger another one of our guys to put that onto the top of the deck onto the field as well, and that is just barely over lethal. That is how weak these guys are. My opponent is basically at half HP, and I have 4 of my monsters on field, and they barely get the job done. So, there you go. But, Paleos. Very fun. Alright, and here we are once again going in second with... Man, the one time I don't draw Time-Tearing Morganite. We don't normal summon very often in this deck, but the one time I want it, I don't have it. My opponent is also on Dark Magician. I talked about this earlier, but here we go. So my opponent is actually going to be special summoning out the Dark Magician. Now, this was... Well, I'll just let it play. So my opponent goes for the fusion summon here and goes into Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight. I'm like, sure, that's fine. It's not that big of a deal. This guy's not doing anything. And then I remembered Soul, or Eternal Soul, is going to make this really difficult. And I was like, oh. Well, I have the Daruma Karma Cannon. It should be fine. But this guy in particular is very, very annoying because I can't target spells and traps with card effects, and it's also making this guy unaffected. So, yeah, a bit of an issue. But I just normal summoned the Hyperia. I think I drew into, like, Balance of Judgment or something like that. I didn't set the Balance of Judgment because I have way more cards than my opponent. Anyway, they go for the Dark Magician here with off of the souls again. They've used 2 souls, haven't used the first effect to just special summon the guy onto the field, and I don't know why. I could not tell you. I could not inform you about why that is the way that they have decided to do things. Anyway, you might be wondering why I'm activating Canadia here. Trust. Just stick with the program, okay? I activate the Canadia, it doesn't do anything, but notably what it does do is put the Canadia into the graveyard so that I can bring it back off of the Daruma Karma Cannon. So, chaining the Daruma Karma Cannon, or activating the Daruma Karma Cannon to flip everything face down. The reason I'm doing this now is because there is a rank 7 monster that I do not want to have hit the field. I don't know if they're playing it, they don't have that many cards in there extra, but there's a chance that that is what they're playing, and I don't really want that to hit the field because it makes things a little bit more annoying and difficult to deal with. So I'm just like, I'm just going to do this, get rid of the entire field, because they're all unaffected, which means due to the game mechanic and me affecting the player, they all go away. So, cool. Anyway, I draw Trap Trick. This is going to be a big mistake. Keep note of this Trap Trick. My opponent activates Maxi, and I'm like, sure, whatever. I mean, it's annoying, but I can't really do anything about that. I'm going to draw off the Hyperia, and I draw into Leoncolia, and my opponent brings back, again, this guy because his name is Dark Magician. I'm like, okay, whatever. I go into the Sprite Elf, and this triggers Backjack, and I get to stack my deck. Now, keep in mind how many zones I have and Trap Trick's effect, okay? Because this almost costs me the game. Anyway, Dark Magic attack, I'm like, oh, that should be fine. I activate the Trap Trick here. Cool. Great. Fantastic. They go for the Eternal Soul. I'm like, that's totally fine. I'm going to go for the Accumulated Fortune, which allows me to draw cards. And then I trigger the effect of Backjack, and I'm like, what in the world am I doing? Oh no. I have cost myself a zone. Because I know what I'm setting. It's Olenoids, right? So realistically, what I should have done is just fired the... Or not Olenoids. Yeah, Olenoids. What I should have done is, as soon as it changed turn, I should have fired the Absolute King Backjack, grabbed up the Olenoids, and then just immediately targeted the Eternal... Well, I couldn't have targeted the Eternal Soul. But at the very least, I would have had that. And then I could have, like, activated Canadia or something along those lines, which would have been unaffected, yada yada. Just, I needed to clear a zone, and I end up, in fact, clogging my zone. So this Trap Trick's now not going to resolve, so oopsie poopsie, I made a big goof. Anyway, Leoncolia is also going to put a card back. I'm getting Harpy's Feather Duster, but I can't really do anything about that. The Olenoids is going to go away, but oh well. And I draw out the second Balance of Judgment, and again, this is where it's like, Balance of Judgment isn't all that great unless you are, like, really far behind on card advantage. And, like, in theory, I am, right? Like, they have 5 cards. I have 5 cards. Like, that's where it's kind of like, eh. And if you keep bringing back, you know, Paleos, if you chain a Paleo off of this, you're losing a draw. So it's like, yeah. Anyway, my opponent goes for the Dark Burning Magic off of the Bond between Teacher and Student, which they search off of Magician's Rod. They're going to try to go to the end of main phase. I go for the Hyperia, and I draw into Grass. I knew I was getting Grass and Raising here off of the, what's it? This guy. So there's that. But my opponent walks over the field and deals 3,000. I'm like, okay, I should be able to do something here. I do have Grass. I hopefully don't die. That's all that I'm hoping. I draw Time Tearing Morganite. I'm like, fantastic. I'm going to go for the Grass here. And this is a... Keep in mind, I activate Grass here, okay? Remember what's going on, okay? Just keep that in mind. I activate Grass, and my opponent chains Eternal Soul. Right? That's the first action that I take, so if they're on auto for their like, Chain Link, that was the first time they could have activated anything, right? So, I go for the Time Tearing Morganite, and this is where they Judgment. Don't know why they would not have Judgmented the Grass and then just activate Soul in a new chain. Like, you don't need to do that, but alas, here we are. They're now negating Time Tearing Morganite instead of Grass. So, yeah. But now they're also down 4,000 life points, which will matter. Anyway, I'm just going to set Balance of Judgment because I know it's going to get wiped. And of course, that is exactly what happens. They're like, that one set card, it's gonna cause issues. Let me get it out of here. Now, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. I'm just going to go for this, set the Daruma Karma Cannon immediately, and just kind of let them play. I'm like, well, maybe they can go to the battle phase. They go for this, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm more so concerned about, like, just nuking the field at this point. So they go for the Eye of Timaeus. I believe they targeted the Dark Magician Girl, which is very, very funny. But yeah, I'm going to flip everything face down, as well as send away the Dark Magicians, and out comes the Dark Magicians. The fusion monster, not the actual... Anyway, it doesn't really matter. They activate the effect of the Eternal Soul, and I'm like, no. I have the Olenoids in the grave for this exact moment. However, it's not going to be all that great. Now, notably, the reason I went for the Daruma Karma Cannon into Olenoids and did this the specific way, obviously, this guy protects the Eternal Soul, so there's that. Can't really do anything about that. Anyway, I do get to nuke the field, however, it's not all that great because of the Dark Magicians, which is now going to float into... That's right, he's back! And the Dark Magician Girl. Now, they're going to attempt to go to battle. I have the Rise to Full Height to protect me, so they get to walk over my one guy, and then they can't attack again. I save my life points, and we're... That literally was, like, exactly the most that I could do, and also exactly what I needed to do to survive there. So there's that. I draw Fiend Griefing, which may not seem like it's very good, but it is. And we go for the Reasoning. And my opponent calls some weird level, like level 12 or something stupid like that. Level 6. There we go. Which isn't that crazy, but just watch the count, you know, right over there. Watch how many cards I get down to, because it ends up... It's very close. It's very close. Oh, okay, it's not, like, very, very close. But it is enough to where it is concerning. Especially with this deck. We get down to 8 cards. My opponent draws a card, because of course they do. And guess what card? Guess what card they draw? That's right, it's the Honest for this deck. Awesome. So I just take 1850 damage, almost killing myself. But we are still alive, and that's what matters. Now, we do have a Fiend Griefing. My opponent goes through the battle phase. I activate the Fiend Griefing on attack declaration, just to shuffle back a card. My opponent allows me... They have the ability to chain Crossout Designator to prevent me from summoning a monster. And they don't do it. Now, would that have killed me? Not necessarily. I still could have, like, transaction rollbacked with a Daruma Karma Cannon to get into something. I could have even transaction rollbacked into Waboku and just kept my monster alive on the field. So there's that. Like, I'm not dead by doing this, but it is very funny that this is what ends up happening. So we still get our monster, and now I can instead use the Rise to Full Height. So as soon as that monster hits the field, I use the Rise to Full Height. It's going to get banished, and it doesn't really matter because we protect our life points, and we protect our snow as well. And, of course, the one card that I hit off of the Backjack was Time Tearing. So, you know, there's that. Anyway, I do end up going for the Dynamicious effect off of the rollback just to get rid of this Dark Magician so that I actually can, like, play the game. I draw another Fiend Griefing, very funny. Here's where Artemis becomes very useful. So we can go for the snow here, you know, special summon back the snow, flip the card face down, and then just I activate the Trap Tantalizing Tune, putting back Dynamicious so that we have a little bit more of a little bit more use of that. We set another Fiend Griefing, and at this point I'm like, okay, this should be in my control. We have, you know, we have the... Where is it? The Rise to Full Heights, we can bring back a Paleo because of Fiend Griefing by shuffling back cards. You know, we have the ability to, if we can put Snow into the graveyard, we're pretty good there. I believe we have a, we have a transaction rollback in the grave as well, so we can, you know, protect ourselves that way. So I'm feeling okay. My opponent goes for the Called By, and I'm like, oh, good, this game's over. And my opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes. Yikes, that was a bit too close for comfort. And the Dark Magician Gauntlet ends with me going again second. Now, this player is more or less what you would see from like a Team Samurai video, where it's like, this is the best Dark Magician deck, and it's like, they're trying to make it work in like Master Tier and stuff like that, and they're just getting absolutely clowned on. But alas, this is the kind of deck list you would expect to see from like someone who is more concerned about winning with Dark Magician than actually just playing Dark Magician kind of thing. And you can see that just with their play, right? They're activating, you know, they tribute summon the Dark Magician Girl to draw 2 additional cards. They have, you know, all of the setup. They actually special summon the Magician Souls instead of sending it to the graveyard to special summon Dark Magician, which is very funny. Every time that happens, I just laugh. It's so funny every time. Anyway, we go for the Time-Tearing Morganite. We're going to normal summon our Backjack, which then allows us to go into the Link Karibo. The Link Karibo doesn't matter because we're getting the effect of our Backjack. To the which my opponent will go Fleur-de-Lis. What is happening? I'm very confused. Why is there a Fleur-de-Lis in this deck? I actually don't know. I wish I could tell you why there's a Fleur-de-Lis in this deck, but I don't know. I saw the deck list. I don't know why this one is in here. And you will see in a second why I'm so confused about this card in particular. Because there are more cards that you'd kind of be surprised about. I immediately fire the Backjack here so that I can set the Fiend Griefing, because this is pretty good. Like, hey, if they get the Dark Magician off the field, I can shuffle it back. And now they can't get it back with the Eternal Soul. It's fantastic. Of course, they get the Magician draw. They're going to activate its effect in order to grab up the Soul Servant, which allows them to place a card onto the top of the deck. And they place the Fusion spell onto the top of the deck. They're going to go for the effect in order to draw 2. And this may seem like a weird point to Olenoids. I'm not really going to be able to stop them from getting 2 draws. Like, in theory, I could have stopped them. But because of, like, it doesn't really make sense to kind of do that. It makes sense to kind of wait for the Magician's Soul, wait for specifically the normal summon. So I kind of wait, see if they're going to do anything, and then I see this happen, and I'm like, okay, now I think is a good time. They've used their normal summon. I get to nuke the field. It's kind of, like, more important to do stuff like that. Anyway, out comes Magician's Souls. They're going to activate another Dark Magical Circle. I'm like, coolio! And then they're going to send away the 2 other useless Dark Magical Circles, and to draw 2. And they draw Piercing the Darkness. First of all, why are we playing this card? Second of all, they then activate Secrets of Dark Magician, which just requires you to fusion summon a monster. Which I didn't know. You could just fusion summon from your hand or field, including Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl as fusion material. Now, notably, they do have a Dark Magician, I believe, in their hand. So that's why they confuse... they use the Dark Magician Girl, sorry. And they use Albaz. There he is! It's Albaz! Yeah, bro's just playing branded. So they go for the Lubellion, and I'm like, wow, I'm really glad I didn't activate this Fiend Griefing earlier, because now I get to shuffle back the Albaz. Now, to be fair, the Albaz isn't really going to do anything against my deck. Or I should say Mirror Jade isn't really going to do anything against my deck, but yeah, might as well. Anyway, so out comes Olenoids. We get to send a card as well. We get to send the Backjack. Now, I've already used the first effect, but I haven't used the Send effect. And my opponent summons, all I read is Piercing. That's it. That's all I read. And I'm like, oh, cool. Well, I have the perfect counter to that. Waboku! Yeah! We're going to activate the Marilla at this point. This is just to get it into the graveyard so that I can bring back another guy, because it's not going to do anything. I send Rollback, and then we just activate Waboku and bring back the Marilla. I also chained the Marilla to the activation of the Backjack so that I would be able to keep the order of the deck. So that was kind of what I did. And you will see I draw Reasoning and Grass. Yep, that was on the top of my deck. It's very funny. We're going to go for the Opabinia here before going for Grass so that I can guarantee that I get the card that I want, which is the Olenoids. And yeah, now we can activate the Grass. At this point, the game is over. My opponent is likely not playing more Eternal Soul. And because of that, they're probably not going to be able to win this game because the recursion is gone. And so my opponent sees the writing on the wall. And, you know, I did activate Grass, so there's that. And, yeah, they just concede. So, I probably could have also OTK'd because I milled Snow, so there's that. And, yeah, good game. Alright, having conquered Dark Magician, what are my overall thoughts on this deck? Honestly, this deck is incredibly fun. I think one of the most fun decks that I have played in recent memory. Yeah, it's up there with, like, Tier. It's up there with Tri-Brigade. It's up there just in terms of enjoyment. It's very up there. I think the way that it plays is very unique in Yu-Gi-Oh!, especially right now, where it's actually just a control deck. It is designed to play multiple turns. It's not designed to OTK or to just, like, set trap cards and then, you know, kill you in 2 turns or something like that, right? And it doesn't play Floodgates, which is also very fun. It is all interaction. It's all knowing what your opponent's deck does, what your deck does, and knowing the different points of interaction and stuff like that. Now, obviously, I didn't play against, like, the best players. I'm not gonna say, like, this deck is insane. It's more so just like, hey, this is a fun deck that you can experiment with, especially if you're not, you know, keen on climbing ranked or anything like that. Like, some people are. If you just want to play the game, if you just want to have fun, I would highly recommend playing Paleos. And again, you don't have to look at all of these expensive cards. You don't need Trap Tantalizing Tune. You don't need Time Tearing Morganite. You don't need all of the extra deck monsters that are in here, right? Maybe you don't have the Sprite stuff. You don't need to play that. That's fine, right? You don't even need Snow. Is it helpful? Yes. Can you play this absolutely 100% without that stuff? For sure. It's going to be a little bit more bricky and a little bit more inconsistent, especially losing things like Rollback and Daruma and all that stuff. But at the very least, you're still going to be able to play the game. You're still going to have fun, and it's still going to be incredibly enjoyable. The Paleos work in such a unique way as well, by being unaffected by opponents' monster effects or just monster effects in general. Being normal monsters as well when they are on the field, and then also having those spell effects, or spell trap effects, which is very, very fun. And are they perfect? No, but they play a lot similarly to how like the runic spells work. Not specifically like runic stun, but like actually playing the runic cards. They kind of work in a very similar way, but instead of like milling your opponent, you just get like additional advantage yourself, right? And instead of choosing to special summon or to activate the other effect, you get both effects, which is pretty cool. They're just tied to trap cards, which I know people will look at a deck like this, will look at how many trap cards there are and go, this isn't a fun deck. How can you have fun using trap cards? But honestly, it's so enjoyable. It's super fun. I thoroughly enjoy it. I would thoroughly recommend it. I'd love to see more people actually playing Paleo, but alas, if Joshua Schmidt can't get people to play it, I ain't getting anyone to play it. But thank you guys so much for watching. Hope that you guys did indeed enjoy it. If you did, like us very much, so appreciate it. And remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.